teach you a real lesson now, motherfucker. Put your fucking mouth on the curb.
Go on, man.
Put it on the curb right now! That's it. Now say goodnight.
It's wrong, and it was eating me up. It was gonna kill me. I mean, I killed 2 guys, Danny. I killed them. And it didn't make me feel any different. It just got me more lost, and I'm tired of feeling pissed off, Danny. I'm just tired of it.
When it comes to redemption arcs, the most famous character that comes to mind is Zuko from The Last Airbender, and for good reasons. However, Zuko has 2 massive benefits over most characters who go through this arc. First of all, he is from a show, not a movie, but a show, which means he had way more screen time than most characters to be developed thoroughly. Secondly, he never really does anything too bad. The worst he does is steal Kitara's necklace and betray his uncle, and sure, he has some temper issues which make him very rude and annoying at times, but he never goes overboard and actually kills anyone. Despite this, he still has one of the best redemption stories ever. But I couldn't help but think, what about a character who goes all out? A character not limited by the ratings of a kid's channel, but at the same time having the far more difficult task to cram the whole arc in a single movie, and to do it believingly. That's where the movie American History X comes in. American History X is a 1998 classic starring Edward Norton and Edward Furlong. The story is about this racist neo-Nazi played by Norton who, in the beginning of the movie, kills 2 black men as they try to steal his car, and it doesn't look too bad. Sure, he has a swastika tattooed on his chest, and not for the religious reasons, but those men really were trying to steal from him. And in American movies, people have died for less. As the movie continues, we see how messed up of an individual Derek is. He's unempathetic, loud, abusive, and a racist with temper issues. We see him shoot the robbers, but one of them was still alive. Yet, instead of waiting for the cops, he straight up brutally curb stomps the man. Even when the cops arrest him, he has a proud smirk on his face, as if he didn't just kill someone. And if that's not enough, later in the movie, we're shown him rob a store and assault the people just trying to make a living. To make matters worse, he isn't any pleasant to be around at home either, where every single line of dialogue he shares with his family feels more like a lecture than a conversation, and every time he's confronted, he'd rather have a violent temper tantrum like a kid and call people names than even try to understand the other side. One interesting thing this movie does is that the story isn't told chronologically. The movie jumps between different timelines, and it does it so well, it would make Christopher Nolan proud. We see him return from prison after his 3-year sentence, and he's completely different than what he used to be. What happened during his stay in prison is only revealed later, and that's a good move on the filmmaker's part, because this change is so drastic that you're left with nothing but questions. How can this man possibly change that much? One of the things I like about this change as the movie goes on is that it's believable. Before we're shown what happened to him in prison, we're given time to observe this new, improved Derek. This Derek is a lot calmer, wiser, more compassionate, and very dedicated to make sure his brother does not follow his past self's footsteps. This Derek actually tries to be a better role model for his younger brother. Speaking of which, his brother is also a messed up child who's struggling to find his place in the world, just like how Derek used to be back when his father died. I feel like I'm getting too ahead of myself. Let's focus on Derek, and for the sake of clarity, I'll explain chronologically what happened to him and how this redemption works.
It's hard to look back and see the truth about people you love.
The youngest we see of Derek is when he is at the kitchen with his family having dinner and talking about his new teacher, Sweeney. During the meal, his father plants the seed in his mind that would later grow into a cancer when he meets Cameron.
I'm telling you, this guy is different. Dr. Sweeney, he's got like 2 PhDs. I don't know what he's doing teaching in our school. He's not like other teachers. What's he got you reading? We're doing this whole black literature unit. Yeah. What? It's everywhere I look now. This affirmative blaction. Hey, read the book, ace the guy's test. Just don't swallow everything he feeds you whole. Hidden agenda or something going on. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, I do. I don't know, I didn't think about it like that.
The next scene is Derek crying over his father's murder and blaming the minorities.
Well, this country's becoming a haven for criminals, so what do you expect? Decent, hardworking Americans like my dad are getting rubbed out by social parasites. Blacks, browns, yellow, whatever. Every problem in this country is race-related, not just crime. They're not products of their environments either. That's crap. Minorities don't give 2 shits about this country. They come here to exploit it, not to embrace it.
Then we jump into his bald head phase. This is when he's at his worst. He teams up with Cameron and leads a group of people to attack a grocery store. Then he plays at the basketball court against the same people who would later come to rob him.
I come in this game right now
Same score, but we play black guys against the white guys. If you win, we will walk away. But if we win, right here in front of everybody, you pack up your shit and get your black asses out of here.
He kills 2 of them in cold blood and gets sentenced to 3 years in prison. While in prison, Derek joins a group of people who seem like they share his ideologies on the surface, but can't care less about them. Derek continues his racist preaching, but he's way out of his element here, and might as well be talking to a wall. This new environment and its people don't care about anything or anyone.
He was taking it from the Mexicans and dealing it out to his own people. He didn't believe in shit. None of them did.
They're like parasites who will turn on each other at a moment's notice if the situation calls for it. The closest Derek has, akin to a friend, is the guy he does laundry with. Derek's friendship with the black man teaches him how race has little to do with someone's morality or lack thereof, and more to do with the people you hang out with. He tries to separate himself from the group, which leads to him getting assaulted and thoroughly humiliated by those very people as a punishment. Despite the humiliation, he stands his ground and rejects their offer to join them, even if it means he'll have to live in fear for the remainder of his time in prison. By the time he returns from prison, he's a changed man who's disgusted by the very people he used to associate with. In the movie, this is the first time we see a major change in him. Derek gets a warm welcome from everyone, and his group is stronger now than they've ever been, only for him to realize how shallow and wrong it all was. He has a falling out with Cameron, which almost gets him killed. He barely escapes it and then explains to Danny what happened. He expresses his regret over the past actions, including the 2 murders, and makes a commitment to be a better person for him, a better role model, a better brother. After sharing a moment and understanding the things Derek went through, Danny decides it's for the best if he too separates himself from the cult. After all, it's better to be good than wait to be redeemed. He starts to make great progress by removing all the hateful things from their room and focusing more on school. Unfortunately, bad things still happen, even after the redemption. As a direct response to their past actions, Danny is shot dead, and the final scene is of Derek holding his little brother's lifeless body and crying. The past and present events are separated visually, with the flashbacks being black and white, matching the characters' thinking, and the present times being colorful, open to more variety. This is where the brilliant structuring of this movie comes to play. The movie jumps between different timelines to turn its story into an emotional roller coaster. It shows us 2 different versions of the same person, both of whom could not be any different. One minute, we see Derek give a rousing speech that conveys how him and the people with him feel.
2 million illegal immigrants bedding down in this state tonight. This state spent $3 billion last year on services for those people who had no right to be here in the first place. $400 million just to lock up a bunch of illegal immigrant criminals. Who gives a shit? Our government doesn't give a shit. Our border policy is a joke. Every night, thousands of these parasites stream across the border like some fucking pinata exploded. Don't laugh. There's nothing funny going on here. This is about your life and mine. It's Americans who are tired and hungry and poor. And I say until you take care of that, close the fucking book. I see this shit going on and I don't see anybody doing anything about it. And it fucking pisses me off.
The next minute, we see those very people use all that motivation in the wrong ways by robbing and assaulting innocent immigrants trying to make a living.
Get some of that in there. Throw it on. Hey, that's a great color on you, you know? You get a white woman's job, bitch. A little better than this one, huh? Yeah.
He tries to make a similar point at the dining table.
1 in every 3 black males is in some phase of the correctional system.
Something about prejudice in the judicial system.
Yeah, if you want to talk about criminal statistics, you might want to take a look at the social inequalities that produce them.
Yap. You know what? Lincoln freed the slaves, what, like 130 years ago? How long does it take to get your act together?
Well, Jews have been persecuted for over 5,000 years. Are you saying that it's wrong to feel sensitive about anti-Semitism?
Only to get in a heated fight with his sister and mother, which then turns physical.
Let her go! Derek, let her go!
Stop! I hate you!
What are you doing, Derek? This is your family.
Right, my family. So what you think? You're not a part of it and you never will be.
That has nothing to do with it.
Oh, it doesn't? Coming in here and poisoning my family's dinner with your Jewish, nigger-loving, hippie bullshit? Fuck you. Fuck you. Yeah, walk out. See this? That means not welcome.
What did I do to
How could
you?
you bring him to my father's table? How could you go from dad to that? Go run to him.
We see him kill robbers in self-defense, only to then curb stomp one who's at his most defenseless. He is shown to be a very vocal racist, only for the movie to have him consistently interact with the black man later in prison. Derek is forced to do laundry with the black man, who, by the way, is absolutely the funniest person in this movie.
Will you just lay on your back and let her take out all that aggression on you. Let her get on top, and she's gonna punish you first. You've been a bad boy, huh? I forgive. Oh, right there. You're hitting it. I forgive you. I love you.
By hanging out with him, Derek loosens up, and as their friendship grows, he starts to respect the man more. One of the scenes that truly opens Derek's eyes is when he finds out why his friend is in prison.
That doesn't make sense. Come on, tell the truth. You chucked it at him or something.
Like I said, I came out of the store, grabbed my arm, it fell on his foot.
Derek killed 2 people and is in prison for 3 years. His friend stole a TV and is sentenced to 6 years, especially due to the officers lying that he threw the thing at them. Derek finds it hard to believe at first, but given how he's in prison already, it's likely he's not even lying. After all, he's already serving the sentence. What will be the point of lying now, especially to a person who can't do anything about it? Situations like this force Derek to think about the topics he used to ignore before. This is when the redemption truly begins. Derek stops hanging out with his group and differentiates himself from the bad influence. What's done is done, however, and they take this as a "if you're not with us, you're against us" situation. Then to punish him, the group corners him and assault him at the shower. From being introduced as such a masculine loudmouth who isn't afraid to throw hands at a moment's notice, to being humiliated in one of the worst ways possible, this is the lowest point of his prison life. The people he associated with showed how little respect they had for him, all the while still taunting him. Despite the odds, Derek didn't give in, even if it meant he'd have to watch his back for the rest of his prison sentence. In prison, there are groups that hang out together and protect their members. By abandoning his group, Derek is vulnerable to any attack from anyone of any group. Yet, despite his paranoia, he never gets ambushed again. He was an open target with no defenses. Yet, these people who he thinks had all the reason to target him never made a single move. This was a small, yet another eye-opening moment for him. By the time he's out, he's loosened up a lot, and on his way out, he thanks his friend for having his back. This is something the past Derek would be too prideful to do. The changes Derek's character goes through in prison is one of the main reasons prisons even exist in the first place. It's to rehabilitate people so that they can rejoin society as a better civilian. Much like in Shawshank Redemption, if not more so, the prisoner serves time and then gets out a new improved person. That's not enough, however. He must maintain his growth and keep learning. When this new Derek returns home, he tries to fix what he was too ignorant to do so in the past. He's nicer to his family. He's trying to teach Danny to do the same, and he's encouraging better people to be around, like the teacher who through thick and thin was there for both Derek and Danny.
That goes too far. This racist propaganda, this mind camp psychobabble, he learned this nonsense, Murray, and he can unlearn it too. I will not give up on this child yet.
I'm just gonna say it, Sweeney is the Uncle Iroh of this story.
Your anger is shutting down the brain God gave you. Blame everybody. Blame white people. Blame society. Blame God. I didn't get no answers because I was asking the wrong questions. You have to ask the right question. Like what? Has anything you've done made your life better?
Someone who never gives up no matter what. Well, Cameron is the Fire Lord Ozai, a disgusting piece of shit with absolutely no redeeming qualities, who grooms and brainwashes vulnerable people into his cult. He recruited Derek back when his father was murdered, using his grief and manipulating him. Then he tried to use Danny as well, already working on replacing Derek. So when this new changed Derek meets the guy and beats him, it's such a satisfying moment.
You prey on people, Cam. You use them. I lost 3 years of my life for your fucking phony cause, but I am on to you now, you fucking snake. I came in here to tell you one thing. I am out. Out! And Danny is out too.
He'll come to me. I'm more important to him now than you'll ever be. Oh. You're a fucking dead man, Vineyard.
It's not enough, however, because at this point, his followers have grown in both size and loyalty. When Derek tries to talk some of them out, mainly his girlfriend, we see how severe the brainwashing is. She went from not being able to get her hands off of him to wanting to see him die. That's how strong this cult had become. Derek escaped the echo chamber and wanted to get others out, but it's not that easy. It never is. When someone's been isolated for enough time, it's very hard to put them in a different place where they can see things in a fresh perspective. After enough time, they would rather stay in their comfort zone than venture outside, even if it means they learn something new and something less toxic.
Tell me what I want to hear, asshole.
Some of them are alright, I guess.
None of them are fucking alright, Danny, okay? Remember what Cam said? We don't know them, we don't want to know them. They're the fucking enemy.
Basically, it's like getting an average TikTok user to read War and Peace. It's not impossible, but it is very hard. At the end, no matter what, the person needs to have a desire for change from within. Forcing change doesn't always work. At times, it even backfires. Fortunately, Derek manages to get his brother away from the negative influences, which leads to one of the best moments in the movie, when they remove all the swastikas from the wall. The scene where Derek covers his his chest tattoo is such an emotionally powerful moment. This is not where the story ends, however. As the old proverb goes, the axe forgets, but the tree remembers. The past does not fade away just because the present is different. It comes back to pay its debt. For Derek, it comes in form of him being in his old group's hit list, while for Danny, it comes in form of a bullet. Derek's current reputation has made him an enemy of the very people who used to worship him, and his past made him a target a long time ago. Just like in prison, now that he has no protection from his own side, he is once again an open target. Unfortunately, this time, the target is Danny. I don't think it's a coincidence that the very day after Derek's fiasco at the party, the kid who'd been shrugging off his target throughout the movie finally decided to take his shot. I like how this interaction was not a sudden one either. These two were built up as the next generation of hateful individuals. Only one tried to change, while the other embraced it. As a result, one was killed, and the other basically re-established the stereotype. This may sound weird, but I'm glad that they used a black kid to shoot Danny. By not having the shooter be a white person, they avoid making it too simple. They already showed the bad things that the white people could be capable of. But aside from the first opening scene, the black people were mostly fine, if not better showcased throughout the movie. Be it Srini, or the other only friend Derek made in prison, or even the other prisoners who don't ambush Derek despite having all the chances. By making the school shooter a black kid, they were able to keep up some nuances and complexity on the situation without making it a complete black and white issue. Both races have people that are capable of doing good and bad. Derek is one of the best characters I've ever seen, and Edward Norton delivers one of, if not the best performance of his career. To think he was in Fight Club just a year over with a completely different physique and personality is insane. How has this guy not won an Oscar yet? Anyway, his character's redemption is one of the best, if not the best, I've ever seen in a movie, and it checks off all the boxes for a good redemption story as well. You see, I love any story where a character goes through a major change, whether it's from bad to good or vice versa. This kind of character journey just works for me, so I figured I'll check out some redemption stories and analyze how they're written and structured. When researching for the redemption arc, I found a list of things that happen to the characters in order for the redemption to work well, and I'd like to share them with you. A quick heads up, I'll be repeating several of the points I've already made. I'm also going to include some other redemption arcs, mainly Jamie Lannister and Zuko, to further emphasize the points. Now, having said all that, let's start. Number 1. Establishing the character. This is when we as the audience are shown what kind of a person this character is, whether good or bad, both in front of others and people who know him best. This is Derek's kitchen fiasco, where he goes on monologues, or his basketball game, where he is determined to kick the opponents out of court, and the very opening where he kills those two men without any hesitance. This opening alone is enough to show the audience what kind of a character we'd be following for the rest of the movie. In Game of Thrones, this is Jamie Lannister being a smug, oath-breaking knight who throws a child out of the window because he was caught having an incestuous relationship with his sister.
Things I do for love.
This is also Zuko trying to capture the Avatar and being an annoying brat while he's at it in The Last Airbender. Number 2. Backstory.
My father says she was born lucky. He says I was lucky to be born.
This is the part where we see why they are the way they are.
I've always had to struggle and fight, and that's made me strong. It's made me who I am.
This is often portrayed through flashbacks, and it adds layers to the characters by sometimes depicting the injustices in their lives and how it shaped or corrupted their minds. In Derek's case, it's his dad's murder, which he blames on the minorities, establishing their hate for them early on.
My father was murdered doing his job, putting out a fire in a fucking nigger neighborhood he shouldn't have even given a shit about. He got shot by a fucking drug dealer who probably still collects a welfare check.
However, in a different flashback later in the movie, we're shown that his father himself was not a good influence by any means. In The Last Airbender, this is Zuko's banishment by his father, and even more appropriate, I guess, would be the Agni Kai scene, where he is punished in front of everyone for simply voicing a genuine question. In Game of Thrones, it's Jaime's decision to kill the Mad King and save his city, only to be known as the Kingslayer and mocked for it by everyone, including the people whose lives he saved.
When you hear them whispering Kingslayer behind your back, doesn't it bother you?
Of course it bothers me.
A lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of the sheep.
It is only later that we find out why he killed the king, and how little the reason itself mattered once the war was over.
Tell me if your precious Randy commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, and children burned alive, would you have done it? Would you have kept your oath then?
If this is true, why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you tell Lord Stark?
Stark? You think the Honorable Ned Stark wanted to hear my side? He judged me guilty the moment he set eyes on me. By what right does the wolf judge the lion?
Number 3, the glimmer of hope that's followed up by a punishment. This is when our character does something good. A lot of times it's a surprise for the audiences, since we've been under the impression that this character is mostly awful. This adds a layer of mystery to their morality. This is when Derek separates himself from the groups, both inside and outside the prison. He's assaulted in the shower in the prison and is almost shot outside. In Game of Thrones, it's when Jamie bargains to stop Brienne from getting raped, only to then lose his sword hand.
Yeah, this should help you remember.
In The Last Airbender, it's when Zuko risks his own life to save Aang using his masked alter ego. It's also him speaking out at the council, or when he tries to help some of the villagers from the Earth Kingdom, only for them to hiss at him. This humanizes the characters, and if well done, makes us feel some sympathy for them early on. Number 4, despite being in their lowest and most vulnerable moment, they maintain the will to stay strong. This is when they stand their ground despite possibility of dangerous consequences. It's when Zuko confronts his father about his dictatorship in the combat episode. It's also when Zuko is rejected by the Avatar group but stays close and tries to individually help them. Be it help Sokka rescue his father and girlfriend, help Kitara find the man who killed her family, or when he helps Aang firebend. The attempt to stay strong despite being the underdog really makes us root for the character.
What are you doing?
Keeping rocks from crushing you.
Okay, I'm not crushed. You can get off me now.
In Game of Thrones, this is when Jaime risks his life to rescue Brienne from the bear. He did not need to do this, but he chose to. Similarly, Derek didn't need to abandon his groups. If anything, he had more benefit staying in those groups, but he chose to stand his ground in spite of the consequences. All 3 of these characters go out of their way to do what they think is right. Not everyone has to agree with them, but at this point, we can at least understand them and the decisions they make. Number 5, the realization of a new perspective, either on them or from them. This is when the character sees the world around them from a different point of view. This often happens when they move to a different place. This is Zuko opening a tea shop with Uncle Iroh. This is Jamie getting stripped of all his riches and royalty and being dragged through the mud as a prisoner. And finally, this is Derek doing time in prison. All 3 characters are out of their comfort zone, yet despite the different environment, they try to fit in and get a realization about themselves and their beliefs. This is when Jamie interacts with Brienne and sees how, despite all the discrimination she has to go through as a knight and a woman, she keeps her honor and despite the odds, does everything in her strength to do what she believes to be right. She takes her duty seriously and reminds Jamie of the times he used to do the same. It's when the characters see how worse others have had in their lives that they realize how much better their own lives are.
You lost your hand.
My sword hand. I was that hand.
You have a taste. One taste of the real world, where people have important things taken from them, and you whine and cry and quit.
This is when Zuko sees the other nations that hate him and what he represents. Zuko finds a new way to look at life and appreciate things as he sees true suffering, especially the ones caused by his own nation.
It's okay. They've hurt me too.
This is Derek's interactions with the black man he does laundry with in prison, especially when they discuss why he's in prison. Number 6, making them the lesser evil. This is the point in story when our more layered, third-dimensional, morally grey character has someone make them look better. For example, if I asked you, who do you think is more despicable character between Jamie Lannister and Nurse Ratched? Who do you hate more? Many of you may say Nurse Ratched, but why is that? Jamie is someone who has killed many more people and even tried to kill a little child. He betrayed one of his kings by killing him and the other by banging his wife, who is also his own bloody sister. Morally speaking, he has done much worse than Nurse Ratched. But chances are, when you're watching these movies and TV shows, you don't see it. That's because we almost never compare Jamie Lannister to Nurse Ratched. We compare characters in the story to each other. We like Jamie Lannister because we unintentionally compare him with someone like Joffrey. Similarly, we like Zuko because we compare him with his crazy sister and even crazier father. And in case of American History X, we compare Derek to Cameron, who is a much more hateable character. This is one of the best and simplest ways that we're able to like a character despite their flaws. This method also works to make us hate a character or establish their certain traits. We hate Todd more because he kills a child compared to Jesse, who loves them. We realize T-1000 is dangerous when he is able to physically beat T-800. We like Uncle Iroh because his brother is a dick. And my favorite, I appreciate older stories more once I see modern-day Hollywood.
Well said.
At the end of the character's journey, Zuko is king, but that's not enough. He still has to undo all the damage his nation did. Jamie has to do pretty much the same thing and re-establish himself as a worthy king's god. As for Derek, his is the saddest ending of them all, as he mainly wants to give his brother a better future, only to have his past actions come back with a vengeance and kill his brother. This is the point in story that I think we can all relate to, albeit to a lesser extent. After all, we all have done things in the past that we regret as we grew up. Whether it was something funny, embarrassing, cringe, or dumb, we all have done at least one thing in our past that that we don't necessarily want others to know. Sometimes it's humiliating and sometimes it's serious. But as long as we learn to grow from it, that's all it matters. However, if people keep dwelling on the past, it's not going to help the growth. Like when someone's old tweets resurface and they lose a job over some jokes they made years ago. These kinds of situations put people in a box and disregard any change the person could have had in all this time. People change. Sure, not everyone, but many do. I'm not telling people to ignore someone's history. After all, those who don't learn from the past are bound to repeat it. Their history is the best indication of what they're like. But too much focus on the past distances you from the person's present and blinds you from the change that they've gone through. Characters going through changes mirror the changes many people go through in real life. And while very few will go through a complete 180 of an arc, it's not impossible. People who have been raised one way can still choose to grow differently. At least I hope they try. One last thing to keep in mind is that redemption takes time. It took Derek 3 years. It took Shoya and Zuko years as well. Progress needs time. It takes time to grow and learn from one's mistakes. This is one of the reasons I did not like the first Thor movie that much. Here's a god who's lived for thousands of years, yet a weekend at Earth is what took for him to switch into a nicer person. It felt way too rushed. In comparison, characters like Theon Greyjoy, Jamie Lannister, and even Tony Stark have significantly better arcs. They struggle, they suffer, and they learn. And it all takes time. As simple as it is to define such character arc, not all stories are able to pull it off well. For every Jamie Lannister, Zuko, Derek, and even Shoya Ishida, we have Darth Vader, Kylo Ren, Loki, and the Scarlet Witch. One of the best things about redemption arcs is that it doesn't come easy or instantly, because that's part of life. Life is not easy, but that's what makes every achievement feel so much better. Watching a good movie, show, or reading a good book stays in mind for longer than scrolling through TikTok and YouTube Shorts. I don't remember 90% of the things I scroll past, but I still remember the movies I loved as a kid and the books I read during the pandemic. I especially remember reading thrillers like Gone Girl, The Girl on the Train, The Couple Next Door, and Until You're Mine. And if you're also interested in reading a good psychological thriller, pause the video right now and check out my novel. If you're unsure which online store to get my book from, try either Smashwords, Apple Books, or Kobo. Just keep in mind that it's not for the sensitive kind, as you can probably tell by the summary. That's it for now, guys, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.